Hi, I'm Carol Tomlinson, and this is my story. For many years, I really did not believe I had a testimony. I, didn't have a dramatic, transformation, and I didn't. I grew up in church, went to church on Sundays, Sunday evenings. My family was stable. My parents were married for 52 years before my dad passed. So, I really had the idyllic childhood. I didn't really rebel in the sense of rebellion that most people think of. In fact, if you remember that song that came out in the 80s, you don't drink, you don't smoke, what do? I was the poster child for that song. I took great pride in being the good girl, being dependable, doing what I thought was right. So I never really had anything traumatic. We never had any traumatic experiences growing up. I think maybe the first traumatic experience I had was in college. When I went to college my first year, my dad had cerebral hemorrhage and had brain surgery. So that was probably really the most traumatic thing that really, had ever happened to me. So I really didn't think, I have a testimony. I felt like testimonies had to be like, I was rebellious, I was partying, I was doing drugs, I was, living this awful lifestyle, and, God came in and saved me and I was turned around. I didn't have that, so I really didn't feel like that I had anything to say. I grew up in church, as I said. We grew up in a Methodist church, so it was a little different than growing up in a Baptist faith. In the Methodist church, we were there. I believed in God. I believed in Jesus, but we didn't do the baptism, through immersion. We went through confirmation. I went through that. It was called confirmation classes when I was probably 13. And, I knew that there was a God. I knew that Jesus was his son. I believed that. And after our confirmation classes, then we were sprinkled. That was how our baptism was. It wasn't through immersion. So I believed that, and like I said, I was still trying to do good, do all the right things. Never really had rebellion until my biggest rebellion probably was my senior year of high school, when I told my mom, I'm like, my friend and I want to go on this cruise for our senior trip. She didn't want me to go. I said, I'm 18. I've raised my own money. I'm going on the trip. That was my rebellion. I know, not very dramatic. But, so I didn't really rebel, and I didn't really do anything that was outside of what was expected. Throughout my childhood, growing up, like I said, when I was 13, I went through confirmation class. After that, still went to church, but I really did not always understand what they were saying. I'd listen to the preacher because that's what you're supposed to do. I listened, I read my Bible, but I really didn't understand it. I did not really fully trust in God. Like I said, I was very prideful in that. I could do it. I'm going to do the right things and earn my reward. So I still was kind of not saved in the true sense of being saved. Went to college, and as many college kids do, I kind of, fell out of church for a little while. We moved. I was working. We were going to classes, studying. So I kind of just was not regular. My second year of college, I met my husband at MTSU in Spanish class, and he had to tutor me to get me out of there. I was grateful for that. So that's where we met. And so I was kind of on this trajectory that my whole life, my plan was I was going to get married, have children, and I was going to be a teacher. And so far, I was going to school to be a teacher. I have met my future husband. All my plans were going in the direction that I felt they were supposed to be going. We got married close to our graduation time. So we got married, we graduated, I got a teaching job, everything's going, just the way God has planned. But all those years, I really was not focused on Him. I was trusting in myself. I lived with a lot of anxiety and fear. I would always, second guess every decision to death. I would, what if this? What if that? What if, I shouldn't be doing that? And, just a lot of anxiety. But I felt like I was still, a good person. I was still doing the things that were right and not wrong. Not long after Jeff and I got married, we decided that we wanted to start a family. And I was excited because that was in my plan. I always wanted to be a mother. Always. That was in my plan. And so I was like, great, I've got my husband, I've got my teaching job. Now I'm going to have my opportunity to be a mother. God had another plan for me. We could not get pregnant. We went through several years of trying to get pregnant, trying to have a baby. Every month, the devastation of knowing this was not the month. I was not going to have that opportunity, and that dream was kind of slipping away. Where all my friends were having children, other people around me were, and it just seemed like God didn't have that in the cards for me. And I remember, just praying to God every month when I learned that I was not, again, going to have a baby. I was not pregnant. I remember praying and saying, God, what did I do? Why are you punishing me? I'm sorry for whatever I have done, that is keeping me from having this dream come true. I didn't know what I did. I just kept saying, God, I've always tried to do the right thing. I've always tried to be the dependable, stable, person and be a good person that, did what I was supposed to do. Why are you punishing me? And it was just anguish. And that was probably went on for 5-6 years. And after about 5 or 6 years, I remember one evening I was in the shower and I was just crying. I was crying out to God and I said, I don't know what to do. I can't do this. I can't fix it. I can't do it. I don't know what the future holds, what the answer is. Please, help me. I just don't know what to do. And I just felt this peace come over me. Like God was saying, you're right. You can't do it. That's been your problem all along. Just like everyone else, you're a sinner. Your sin may not have been as obvious and out there for everyone to see, but my sin was being in my pride. My sin was trusting in myself and not trusting God. My sin was believing that I could do it in my own strength and my own power. And my sin was believing that, I'm better than other people because, I don't lie, I don't steal, I don't go out and, drink. I don't do those things. So, my sin was in believing in myself. And, even I remember years later, I went to my sister and I apologized to her because I remember telling her, I'm sorry. God has revealed to me that I was even, holding this over you like I was the good sister. And, I had to apologize to her for that in God's eyes, we were the same. We were equal. And so, it was just kind of a revelation. I began to realize that. Jeff and I began looking to get involved in church. We knew when we had a family, we wanted them to be raised in the church. We both were. So, we kind of started that process, but I don't think I had fully given everything over to God until it's probably 1996. Jeff and I went with some friends of ours to hear a speaker at MTSU, and his name was David Ring. And he came and he had cerebral palsy. And he was speaking to us about all the things that God had used his illness for. He had cerebral palsy. He had a hard childhood. and he just used all those things. He was saying, God used all those things, and he's brought me here, even though it's hard for me to move, it's hard for me to speak. He used those things for, his glory. And he asked at the end, he gave a time of invitation. And I was a very private person. I didn't share, other than with my husband, what was going on, my heartaches, because that would admit that I couldn't handle something, that I was weak and I didn't know how to handle it. So I didn't share a lot. It was not in my nature. Doing this is not in my nature. But God, spoke to me, moved my heart when David said, I want you to close your eyes and raise your hand if you feel like you need to let go and let God have all this. If you feel like you need to really come to God, ask him to forgive you and give it all to him. And I remember sitting there with my husband and our two friends and just bawling, just knowing that God wanted me to do that. I had felt like for quite some time there was this battle inside of me where God and Satan were kind of battling for my soul and who was going to win. And I knew I didn't want Satan to, but I didn't know how to do it. And I remember raising my hand and crying and saying, God, I want you to take all this. I want the peace that I see other people have because they trust you. They fully trust you. And that's what I want. I want that peace. I don't want to live with this fear, this anxiety, trepidation, second guessing everything. That day, the Lord took that fear and it didn't go away instantly. I don't want people to think that it always just immediately, you accept God and Jesus into your life and let them rule, that immediately all your sorrows, all your troubles are going away. God doesn't promise that. He never promises that, hey, when you come to me, everything's going to be sunshine and roses from now on. You're not going to have a care or a worry in the world. And that's okay, to know that. It's okay to say, I have a question, God, why is this still going on? And I want people to know, because I was afraid for a long time to say, God, I trust you, but I still kind of have a question. I still want to know how this is going to end, why this is happening. So it was hard. There was a lot of pride that I had to put aside. And at that time, we decided we were going to a Baptist church in Murfreesboro, and we decided that we were going to join. For the first time, I decided that I was going to publicly let everyone know about my decision through baptism by immersion. I felt like, I needed to take the pride out, and that was a way for me to do that, was to say, I'm going to publicly go out and show that I have accepted the Lord as my Savior. So I got baptized. We're going to church. Still was not able to have that one dream I still had left of having, being a mother. So Jeff and I decided to start looking into adoption. And we went to some conferences. We, listened to some speakers. And I remember what sealed it for me at one conference was a lady saying, you need to decide, is your goal to be pregnant or is your goal to be a mother? And if your goal is to be a mother, you don't have to get pregnant to do that. And that just stuck with me because I had never thought of it that way. And I was so excited because I told Jeff, I said, that's my goal. I want to be a mom. I want to love a child and, take care of them and help raise them and do the things that a mom will do. And so we decided to look into adopting through a Latin country because Jeff had a really soft spot in his heart for Latinos, and he taught Spanish in high school, so we thought, that'll be good because if there's any communication problems or issues, we don't know if we'll get an infant, if we'll get an older child, that'll be good. So we began looking into it, and we eventually signed with a lawyer. We ended up with a private lawyer to adopt from Mexico. And within a few months, I mean, I was really shocked because it really was a few months. The lawyer called and said, hey, we have a baby for you. The baby's not born yet. The baby will be born. First they said July because she ended up not coming till August, but they said July, and this was like the 1st of June. So we were like, oh my goodness, we don't have anything. So we scrambled, we got everything ready. We met our daughter when we met her in person when she was a month old. We flew to Mexico and we went to court. And when we got to court, the judge said, hey, I'm not sure this is going to happen. The birth father has decided he wants to claim his rights. So we have to give him so many, days to show up at court and do that. And then if he doesn't, you can, proceed. So we flew back home without our baby, which was very, very difficult. Flew back home. They called us back in October and said, hey, come on down. We've got a court date. You need to bring witnesses. So my mom, my dad, Jeff's mom went with us. We flew back down. We went back to court, did all the things we were supposed to do at court. And they said, okay, it'll take, a week or two for everything to be final. We go back to Tijuana, which is where she was born, to wait out for the rest of the court proceedings. And as we're there, they let us know it's going to take a little longer. So everyone flies back home except for me, who speaks no Spanish. And I stay with Hannah in Mexico by myself in a hotel room for about another month. And at the end of that month, they said, hey, there's still some other issues going on. We know you can't stay. So we're going to apply for what they call a humanitarian parole. So you can take Hannah home with you. She can stay with you in Tennessee and wait until it is time for, the finalization of the adoption. And then you all can fly back and get the final papers and do all that. Shouldn't be more than a month or so. Long story short, the month or so turned into 15 years. So, as you can tell, even though I had made my profession, God's timing was still not my timing. Everything was still not working the way I thought it should work. So we ended up being told when she was almost a year old, hey, this is not going to happen. It's not going to work. You need to make plans to bring her back down to Tijuana and leave her. That was gut-wrenching. Jeff and I spent the evening. We cried. We talked to God and we said, God, this is not what we want. You know that we want her to be here with us to grow up. But if this is your will, you love her more than we do. And we know this. And we're going to trust that you're going to put her in the place she needs to be. So we kind of made peace. And then we're getting ready to make plans. And 2 days later, we get another phone call from the lawyer. And I sort of felt like Isaac and Abraham when the ram was in the thicket and supplied, because they said, hey, they don't want you to bring her back. The lawyer that you were using had gotten into some complications, so they just really want you to change lawyers, and then everything will go through. So we did, and thought that was the end of it. About right before her second birthday, again, we were told, hey, it's still not going to happen. Prepare to bring her back. This time, my dad, Jeff, myself, and Hannah flew to Arizona. We were that close to actually having her go back. We flew to Arizona. My dad and Jeff went across the border. We refused to take Hannah across the border until we knew for sure what was happening and what the plan was. So we did not take her back across. My dad and Jeff went. They met with what would be a guardian ad litem here, the same equivalent. He just kind of looks over all the paperwork. He looks over pictures, looks over reports of where we've taken her to the doctor and taken care of her. And he looks over all of that and says, I'm going to tell the judge it's not in the best interest of the child for her to go back. She needs to stay with you. So again, we're thinking, a couple of weeks, this will be done. My dad and Jeff come back across. They make plans to stay there, and Hannah and I fly home alone. And I remember a couple of days later getting another phone call that, hey, we got to wait, another 60 days because we have to re-notify the birth parents, and we have to go through all of that and give them time to come back to court if they want to. And I remember I was by myself. I was at home with my baby, and I was crying out to God again. I was on my knees on the floor saying, God, I do not know what to do. We have no idea what to do. Please help us. I mean, those were my exact words. Please just help us. Show us what to do. The next morning, I went to my ladies' Bible study that I had missed the prior week. And the lady that was leading it, she came up to me. She had a piece of paper in her hand, and she said, Carol, I don't know why, but I gave out scriptures to everybody last week, and God told me this one was for you. And she had rolled it up in like a little scroll with a little ribbon around it. And I said, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I took it out to the car, got Hannah buckled in, sat out in the car. I opened it up, and my verse was Isaiah 41:13. It said, I am the Lord your God who holds your right hand and says to you, do not fear. I will help you. I still get chills and kind of choked up about that, because that was one of the most obvious times that God answered a prayer. I knew that verse had been saved for me, because those were my exact words to him the night before, was help me, help me. And so even though things weren't the way I wanted them, and they weren't going the way I wanted, God was reminding me, I'm helping you. I'm helping you. So for the next 15 years, Hannah stayed with us the entire time, but it did take 15 years to get everything sorted out and get her adoption finalized. But for the next 15 years, any time that I was anxious or nervous, I would recall that verse and I would say, God, I know you're helping me. I would remind myself, I don't see what he's doing. I don't know what he's doing in Mexico with those judges. I don't know what he's working out, but he's working. He's doing something. I don't know why. He could just snap his fingers and make it end right now. I don't know why he's not. But through this journey and through coming to trust and believe in him, what I was learning this whole time, and I'm still learning today, is God was not punishing me. He was not punishing me at all. In fact, a few years later, we were blessed with a biological son. So God was not punishing me all this time. God was teaching me. He was teaching me to trust him, to hold on to his word and what he said and what he promised as truth, even when I couldn't see it. So even when you can't see it, hold on and just put your faith and your trust in God, because you're not going to find any other peace. You're not going to find any other answer for your anxiety, for your doubts, for your fears. You're not going to find that anywhere else. There's nothing that I can even say in words to describe what it means to trust God and to realize that you don't have to have a dramatic experience. You don't have to have turned your life from a complete 360. We're all still sinners. All sin is the same in God's eyes, and we all need a Savior, even those of us who think we don't. Even those of us who think, hey, I'm a good person, I'm doing the right things. We need a Savior. And even across the years, there have been other things, God has carried me through. My father had cancer. He passed away from cancer. In 2020, my job was deleted after 16 years with the COVID pandemic. My mother had a stroke that year. And just even though those things were not, in our eyes, good things, they were good things because they were reminding me of God's faithfulness and God's carrying me through each and everything. And that's my prayer for you, that you'll find that peace and you'll know that God's going to carry you through.